Hello and good morning, MYM Insiders. How's everybody doing today? This is Ricardo Harshaw, and I am here to talk about innovation. And we are going to go to, well, I don't know if he's really one of the innovation gurus or early pioneers of innovation. I mean, innovation's been around forever, hence we're here today. But I think he's one of the earlier pioneers in sort of a systemic look at the art and science of innovation, and certainly putting some ideas out in the form of books and seminars and things like that. So I'd like to consider Tom Peters to be one of the grandfathers of innovation, even though that's probably too big of a title to put on him. But nevertheless, he's been influential, certainly in the last 25 to 30 years on this topic in American business. And this webinar is designed to take a look at some of the thoughts and ideas of Tom Peters and to give them to you mainly, like other things on the Innovation Hour calls, to inspire you to innovate your own business. Now, I'm going to break this webinar into two major parts. The first part is going to be a series of about, well, I got to get rid of that sound. Hang on just one second. That is not going to work. Okay, that will work. I'm going to break it into two parts. The first part is about 10 or so nuggets of Tom Peters innovation-ness, and I'll make some comments and give you some commentary along the way. And then the second part of this is a little bit interesting. When I was in college at Brigham Young University, I graduated in 1993, and this was probably one of the last year or two that I was there. They showed a video on innovation that was produced by Tom Peters and his company, and it featured about 5 or 6 different companies and showed some innovative things that they did. And Tom Peters then took those companies, highlighted them, and made a video about them. At the time, I didn't really know much about Tom Peters. This is 93. His book, In Search of Excellence, that put him on the map, I think dates back probably to the mid to late 1980s, something like that. So his name was well known at the time, but I was just a business student in college. I didn't really know much about him. And I was impressed enough with the video that, number one, I took copious notes on the video itself. And number two, I thought so highly of the notes that I had taken that I actually took the time to type them up and create sort of a permanent document or record of what I learned on that video. And that's actually what I'm going to share with you, is the spotlight of these 5 or 6 companies. Now, certainly they're out of date at this point. It's been 20 years since I've watched the video, at least, maybe a little bit longer. And the companies that he's highlighted may or may not still be, you know, pushing forward and doing awesome. But it doesn't matter, because it's the principles that are interesting. And the execution of principles comes and goes with management and with times and with the economy and all different kinds of factors that can affect how well a company performs. But I think the principles of innovation are interesting and worthwhile to visit as it applies to those companies. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the first part of this, which is just some of the principles that were gleaned as I prepared this webinar out of some of Tom Peters' multiple books. He's got several books on innovation, and I've been a student of them over the years. So let's go ahead and take a look. Number one, make a decision. And the format that we'll use is I'll put these on the screen. I'll have some interesting and entertaining pictures of Tom Peters speaking. And if you've ever heard him speak, he's a great speaker because he's really fiery. And he's got sort of an indignation with mediocrity that is palpable, and it's just kind of fun to listen to him talk. And I think this photo of him on this slide sort of captures that fieriness that he has. But I'll ask you at the end of each slide how you could do this, and I'd encourage you to jot down some notes. Again, the Innovation Hour call is there to inspire, not necessarily to say, hey, do this specific thing, but here, capture this specific principle and see how you can relate it to your company. So as it relates to innovation, the first thing he says is make a decision. And I think this is good advice in lots of different environments outside of just the innovation discussion, but as it relates to innovation. And here's what he says: decide right now to set a matchless standard for service. And I'm going to be the first one to acknowledge that this is really hard to do. It's really hard to do, but something that is necessary. It's something that is going to really set you apart as a company that is easy to do business with, that is actually fun, or in many cases, desirable to do business with. And as you have done business with my company, depending on how long you've been doing business with Monopolize Your Marketplace, these are things that we've been working really, really hard on over the last 18 months, and we've seen great strides, particularly in the last 6 to 8 months, just trying to make things easier and better. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. I'm going to go on the premise that the majority of the people listening to this call are home improvement remodeling companies. That may not be 100% true, but it's going to be a high percentage true, just given the fact that we now primarily deal in that sector. So think about this from a service standpoint. Matchless standard for service. What kinds of things could you do in that regard? Can you make that decision, though, to set a matchless standard for service? Think about that. And as you do this, remember, your prices are not so important as the way that people perceive your company when they're doing business with you. It's going to lead to referrals. It's going to lead to repeat business. It's going to be captured in your identity, if that's indeed part of your identity. And these are things that you can easily work around pricing issues by simply being better, okay? Don't worry about being clumsy, getting it wrong. I have a former employee, and still a good friend of mine, but he's a former employee because we clashed on this point many, many times during the on and off again career that he had with my company. I think he worked for me and then not for me 2 or 3 different times. But ultimately, this is a major point that he really just had a problem with, which is making a decision to do something, going out there and doing it, and given the fact that you're trying as hard as you can to do things on the fly is an inevitable consequence of daring to do anything worthwhile, whereas my friend wanted to have everything perfectly organized, tested, ready, and in place before any triggers were pulled. And I had to explain to him it's really hard to keep paying the bills if you're not doing something. You can't wait until everything is perfect. But I know this: if you will challenge yourself to set this standard of service and then start promoting this and then get out there and not really, don't worry about being clumsy and getting it wrong. This doesn't give you carte blanche to just screw things up. But here's what I found. This is a very interesting principle. I learned the name of this principle in a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Great book if you are interested in those kinds of things. But here's what the principle is. He's called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law states that the complexity and duration of a task will balloon in proportion to how much time you have to complete it. In other words, it's the law of the deadline. If you have a lot of time to get something done, then the task will suddenly become very large and clumsy and difficult and time-consuming. But if you have a very limited amount of time, then it forces you to focus on the essential elements of getting that task done, and all of the extraneous time and things related to that task go away, and things that would in other circumstances take a long time and be very complicated are done very quickly and with a tremendous amount of efficiency. I mean, think about back in school when you had a big paper to do, and of course you never did it until the last day, and then that last night, the ability to focus and get things done and stay up all night and just not be distracted by other things. That's the law of the deadline. It's called Parkinson's Law. And I want to apply it into this scenario right here, which is if you commit yourself to doing something awesome and you put yourself out there without really being ready to perform on that awesome thing, then the pain that will start to inflict you based on not doing what you said is going to immediately cause you to much quickly get better much faster than you otherwise would. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a phenomenon that is principle-based, and it works. But if you endeavor to, let's get it right, let's be more measured, let's get this, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, which is important, but on the front end, just getting out there, I'm telling you, when you start screwing things up, it's a tremendous incentive to fix those things and to identify things that are problematic and that you didn't account for. And that's, I think, what Tom Peters is encouraging you to do. It's certainly what I would encourage you to do. It's a phenomenal way to get things to happen quickly. Picture yourself as the greatest blank ever and start accordingly. Picture yourself as the greatest remodeler ever and start accordingly. Picture yourself as the greatest marketing company ever and start accordingly. Whatever it is, make a decision, get out there, do it. Don't worry about being clumsy, getting your teeth kicked in a little bit, because that pain is very, very valuable if you allow it to be valuable. Now, you don't want to just go out there and suck and continue to suck and not worry about it. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, customers are not number one. Not number one. It's the employees, stupid. And that's a Tom Peters quote. You know, this is one of those things where you've got to make decisions a lot of time, particularly when you start talking about that certain segment of customers where they just are abusive or annoying or disproportionately time-consuming, and you have to make decisions on how is this going to affect your customers versus how is this going to affect your employees. And having the courage to look at a customer that is not the right kind of customer and saying, you know what, this is not going to happen, or having your employees back when an argument comes up with a customer instead of just automatically saying the customer is right. Get out of the way of would-be heroes. I don't want to discuss that. Failure isn't optional, it's mandatory. This is, again, kind of the same thing we were talking about a minute ago, giving your employees not just permission to fail, but making it optional. And again, this is just putting yourself out there. You know, we used to have a program where I trained consultants, and we helped them to create and start and manage a career in marketing consulting business. And we called them master consulting agents. And the short acronym for master consulting agent was MCA. And this became the de facto name for these folks in our organizations. We just called them MCAs. And I would go train them, and I would say, don't think of yourself as an MCA. Think of yourself as an MCH. MCH is the acronym for makes crap happen. And this is the attitude and the mindset of innovation, is making crap happen. So find things that you can do, make things better, and just make them happen. Again, and a little bit redundant with what we just talked about, but now we're talking about deploying employees on the front line that have this authority, and not just the authority, but the mandate to get out there and make crap happen, okay? You get what you ask for, and it talks about pizzazz at TGI Fridays was an employee-based mindset. If you're familiar, you know, TGI Fridays in today's day and age maybe doesn't seem like such a big deal. If you go back 20, 25 years, it was kind of a big deal. That kind of casual American food type restaurant wasn't that common. Certainly in the last 25 years, there's tons and tons of these kinds of things. But go back 25 years and think about the people at TGI Fridays wearing the suspenders and having the buttons and it being kind of a fun and crazy place. This was innovated by employees that just decided to start doing that, and it kind of caught on and became the company culture. Okay, treating them different. Give them a break. Do something different. Now, when we say treat them different, we're talking about customers and employees. Call a timeout. We're talking about just taking time, not being, well, I don't even know how to communicate this necessarily. Stopping down to be more humanized with people, whether it be employees or customers. Changing their scenery, taking potentially your people on a I can't think of the word, retreat, celebrations, birthdays, you know, have them read a book, have a book club in the company, spring cleaning, get everybody's sleeves rolled up. What he's talking about is just getting people out of the routines, getting people, particularly employees, to where it's not just mundane drudgery. And, you know, just think about these things, treating them different, doing something different. One of the employers that I've worked with, not my employer, but a client of mine that did this really, really well was a company called Dana Box, and it was a big box manufacturing company over here in the Fort Worth area. And this guy understood this concept, and his number one tool for doing something different was fun, whether it would be company picnics or getting people out of the assembly line and out to you know, play softball or something like that. One of the things that he would do is reward employees when certain types of orders that were more difficult to fill would come in. They would have these huge speakers hanging in the factory that they would blast music. They would have a scoreboard, a timer for 4-hour orders. Employees that did well were rewarded with time to come into the lounge and play pool, and just different things to shake it up a little bit. Okay, spring training. He talks about the concept of why is this only appropriate for baseball? Why don't we get our employees out again? Kind of also in the idea of calling a timeout and doing something different, getting out maybe into a retreat and getting people to, be on the same team and tackle the fundamentals a little bit. How could you do this? Think about it. Let's talk about diversity. As he says, diversity. What do your customers look like? What is their gender, their ethnicity? What is their income? And what we want to do is we want to try to match up the employees with the customers. Think about it for a minute. There's a concept from the book called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini that talks about social proof. And if you've been around Monopolize Your Marketplace for any length of time, you've heard us talk about social proof. And social proof is most powerful when the people that you're holding up as social proof tend to be more similar to your customers. And this is true also for your employees. The more similar your employees are to your customers, the more they work. Now, I've had this same discussion on another innovation webinar. I don't have the photo handy, but I have this hilarious, not hilarious like a clown is hilarious, but hilarious in how spot on it is at the Apple Store. And this was a picture that I took my own self on my own iPhone while I was at the Apple Store one day. And if you know anything about the Apple Store, they've got just 1 billion employees on staff at any given time. I mean, you can go in there and count 30 or 40 employees sometime in a store that's typically would have maybe 5 employees working if you went to a similar kind of a store that wasn't that big. But here was what was interesting and funny about this photo is there were 4 Apple employees sitting on 4 different sides of a table working with 4 different customers, and I'll be darned if every employee did not look like nearly the mirror image of the customer they were helping. There was an older, white-haired, balding gentleman helping an older, white-haired, balding gentleman. There was an older, sort of empty nester, housewife-looking customer being helped by a near mirror image. There was a younger, hipper customer being helped by a younger, hipper. And the only thing that was consistent was they were all wearing blue shirts with the little lanyard with their name tag around their neck, but everything else, they looked just like their customer. It was amazing. Diversity, okay? This is just a tip, a side tip, and I think it's very appropriate for the home improvement business. Focus on women. They're making many of the purchasing decisions, and I think that this is something that you would be well to address and think about and look at in your business. We won't spend a lot of time on that concept right here, but do think about it a little bit. Show business. Show business. What's show business? Well, let's talk about home shows and other scenarios where you're going to be in front of people. Bring your 75 square feet, your 3 tables to life. Okay, so if you've got an opportunity to present or be a part of some sort of a show, bring it to life. Change the course of somebody's day. Make it interesting. Make it a little pizzazzy. Imagination and zeal to recreate daily. Okay, and he talks about the concept of people stealing your secrets and seeing what you're doing and running off with it. And you know, his idea is the same as mine on that, which is who cares? Innovate the next thing. But let's talk about this concept of show business, making not a spectacle for the sake of making a spectacle, but making something worth looking at. Okay, bring stuff to life. Have a little attitude, have a little personality, have a little bit of charisma and charm and so forth. I was recently with a client, and we were on a project together, and we were together the most part of the day, and the client looked at me about oh, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through the day, and he goes, how you doing? How you feeling? And I said, oh, I didn't really know what he was getting at. I said, oh, things are good. I'm feeling fine. He goes, you look tired. And I thought, wow, if that's somebody's perception of me that I look tired, that's not good. I need to overcome that. So I started making a conscious effort, even when I was tired, and I did feel tired, to, come to life a little bit. Show business, man. You got to be on all the time. Blow it all up. And here's another photo of Tom with his fiery persona. The way you're doing things now won't keep you ahead for very long. Now, I just made an Apple reference, and I'll make another one here. Apple is such a good example of a company that's willing to blow it all up, that has no fear of cannibalization of their products, doesn't care that iPads are going to cut down the number of laptop computers that are sold, doesn't care that the iPhone is going to obliterate the iPod sales. It's an amazing culture in the company that's willing to blow it all up. And I think it would be worthwhile and useful for you every once in a while to look around and say, is the way that I'm doing things the right way? Do I need to change my service offering, what we sell, the way that we do business, the way we position our company? And don't be afraid to blow it all up. I mean, if you talk to my wife, she would tell you the craziest stories. And she would roll her eyes and she would sort of dismiss the stories. But the stories are about the course of our company here at Monopolize Your Marketplace and what we've done over the last 20 years and where we started and where we went and then the turn we took here and then we started doing this and that and the other. And we've kind of changed the whole thing that we do on a major level about 4 different times. And you might look at that as wishy-washy or can't decide. And of course, everything is sort of related to marketing. It's not like we're, a completely different company. We didn't start selling cell phones, which actually we did one time, but that was a short-lived project. But the idea is to be willing to blow it up and to do things different, okay? Resisting the temptation to ease up when things are going well, for forward-thinking business owners, this is when you really look around and say, let's dig in and let's try a little bit harder. I want to make a comment about this. One of my clients is a large air conditioning and plumbing company, and I remember at the beginning of 2012, in about January of 2012, so going back a year and a half ago, the weather nationally was very warm. If you remember this, you can't name a part of the country that didn't have an unseasonably mild winter that year. In fact, here in Texas where I live, it was so warm that a lot of the plants that normally are killed off in the wintertime were not killed off. And so we had the most heinous, unbelievable, ridiculous spring for allergies. It was just crazy. People were dying. But for them, it was very unseasonably warm. So business, of course, when you're in the heating repair business and it's not cold like it's supposed to be, it suffers. And, I remember asking them about it. Hey, the business is slow. You've got this, this warm weather, and it was prolonged. It wasn't just a week or two. It was pretty much the whole winter. It never got particularly cold. And the guy just refused to take it as an excuse. And he said, now that things are a little bit slower, we're having an opportunity to really focus in on some of our systems, some of our personnel, and it's allowed us to slow down just a touch and make ourselves stronger. And then sure enough, when the weather got back to normal the next summer and then the subsequent winter, they were so much stronger and better and able to take advantage of opportunities and grow. And the company's grown tremendously in those last 18 months. And I owe it a lot to the ownership of the company being willing to just look at themselves and blow things up a little bit and make it better. Incremental change. 10 things every 60 days, what kinds of things can you change? What can you do different? If you don't focus on them and you don't count them and you don't keep track of them, chances are pretty good that you just won't do them. And you'll have 60 days pass, and you'll have a half a year pass, and you'll have another year pass where things really didn't change that much. It's okay to focus on minor things, but do something, change things. Every 60 days, 10 things. Think right now. Put down a list right now. What things could you change? This is something that we're doing in our business continually, and this is why our business always looks so much different, hopefully better. But yeah, change things. Next, humanize. Ultimately, you're doing business with people, not with you know, soulless masses. You're doing business with people. So humanize your company. Service is better for the server than it is for the one being served. He talks about putting plants in nursing homes. I don't have a lot of time. I won't go into that anecdote, but just think about this in terms of dealing with humans, servicing. We already talked about how you treat the employees. Now he's talking about customers, relationships. This is a lot of little stuff. Thank you notes, recognition, lunches, dressing for success, solving problems now. You know, this is a big issue. Do you let problems fester? My dad is an entrepreneur and has done really well in the real estate business, and he has a phrase that I'll never forget because I must have heard it 1,000 times growing up. He called it rot off management. Rot, like something that's rotten, rot off management. And he says you can't just let things solve themselves. They don't solve, they get worse. And if you let them rot, if that's your management style, is to just let things deteriorate and get worse and ignore the problems, it just gets worse. So, you know, I would challenge you to the same thing. Solve problems now. Something comes up, deal with it. Talks about 3,000 miles to close, being willing to get on an airplane to close a big deal instead of doing it over the telephone. Letting people know what you've done so that they understand the significance of what you've done. Building relationships. You can't build a relationship with people who are ignorant to what you've done. So this is really sort of a confirmation bias kind of a discussion here. Small stuff. This is a continuation of what we just talked about. Dot the I's, cross the T's, send out errorless invoices. If you have a retail store, probably not applicable to most of you. How do they look? You know, people are going to judge you by these things. Little stuff torpedoes big stuff. So you're performing fantastic on all these awesome things that you do, but you don't have errorless invoices, or your bathrooms are not, you know, spotless. And so people notice that small stuff, and they discount what you've done and the efforts you've put into the big stuff. So, you know, think about that. The devil is in the details. This contradicts a little bit with the advice that I gave earlier on just making a decision and going out there and doing stuff. But I think that conversation was had in the spirit of putting yourself in an environment to force you to get better quickly. Ultimately, obviously, we want to do things right, have things as flawless as possible. Accumulate small wins with your customers, and it'll accumulate into big wins ultimately. Okay. This is what he calls the bump into factor. Making sure that you bump into things that remind you about where your company is, good, bad, or otherwise. Posting customer service stats so employees can see them. Distribute good and bad customer letters. Putting these things in front of employees' faces. Plaster customer photos on the walls. We go back to our discussion of humanizing, making sure that your customers, employees understand that you've got customers. They're real people. They're not just a voice on the phone, but they're actual humans. Okay? Invite customers over to your place if appropriate. Awards for heroism, doing things that made a huge difference. Okay, those are the first 10 or 12 points that I wanted to bring out on Tom Peters, give you some commentary. Now I'm going to shift gears. I mentioned this at the top of the discussion that I saw a video from Tom Peters when I was in college. I made copious notes, and I'm going to share those with you now. And the first thing we're going to talk about is a baseball team. Minor League Baseball. Louisville Cardinals, A. Ray Smith owned this minor league baseball club. Again, I've acknowledged earlier that this is severely outdated. The video, I saw it 20 years ago. A. Ray Smith, for all I know, is dead. The Louisville Cardinals minor league baseball team may not do any of these things anymore, but the principles are what's important, okay? And these are the kinds of things that he did. He wanted to take a minor league baseball team in a market that didn't have major league and make it a big deal and make it so people love going to the game. So they cleaned the seats, hand-wiped all the seats daily. They didn't want the seats to be dirty or gross. They had a 25-item checklist for restrooms, the concourse, et cetera. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, if you're one of our customers in the remodeling area and you've looked at the contractor standards guide that we pioneered many years ago, I mean, those ideas are coming straight from this. We put together a job site cleanup roster that has things that our customers do to keep the job site clean and safe. And I'm taking those ideas straight from this video. $1 hot dog, 75-cent beer, a variety of food available. And what they're talking about is making the experience going to the ballpark something that people can afford, that they're going to want to go to, that doesn't have to just be a one-time treat because it's so expensive. Get them out. Put a band, like a high school, like a brass band in the stands, picnic area on the concourse, allow people to bring their own food if they want. But when they see that hot dogs are only $1 and beer is cheap and have a variety of food, maybe they don't want to, but they don't feel like they're being plundered when they go to the ballpark. Players are required to sign autographs before each game, have a big scoreboard like a professional stadium would, lots of different promotions and drawings, games televised locally. And, you know, this flies in the face of what people would think. Well, if we televise the games, then people aren't going to want to come out. Well, actually not true. If you televise the games, then people are going to become familiar with the players. They're going to start to like the team. They're going to have some sort of an affinity for the team. And then when they find that actually attending can be a frequent event instead of a plundering once-in-a-while event, then people are going to want to come. I'm telling you, people are desperate for things to do with their time for entertainment. And we've got TV, and we've got cell phones that we got our faces stuck in, and we've got movies to go to, and all these things that we do. But who doesn't show up multiple times a month saying, well, what should we do? We've got small kids. We don't have small kids, whatever your situation. And if you felt like you could go down to a leisurely baseball game for a good price with a great experience, this is what he was going for, okay? Fireworks after every game. Of course, all of this stuff costs money. Does it make a difference? And ultimately, when we're talking about innovation, we're really talking about the cost to do something versus the cost to the amount of business that it brings in. So what makes the difference? Treats the customers like they're relatives. No gouging, clean facilities, blatantly and obviously better than industry standards in all areas. Remember that, making a decision. Benefit to the customers, more enjoyable atmosphere. They feel appreciated. They don't feel plundered. Residual benefit to the team, maximizing the price quantity equation. So they average a higher attendance, which offsets the lower margin that they make for each customer. Customers come for fun, not just a once-in-a-while treat. Suggestions: make a list of every aspect of your business. Get an idea from the list above. Survey your customers. Find out what do you not like about your industry, and then write down ways to far exceed. Now, this goes back to our innovation formulas and the magic wand. Then you must innovate. No one's going to ask for a band, but they're sure going to like it, okay? You got to think up the band. You can't go to the people and say, well, what do you want us to do to make the game more enjoyable? They're probably not going to say, get a band. But when you get a band, they're going to enjoy it, okay? And you know what? We don't have to – I was about to say something mean and rude. I'm going to say it differently. You're smarter than you think you are, okay? Allow yourself to have ideas. If you think that a band is a good idea for the minor league baseball team, then put a band in the stands. You don't have to have 75 customer surveys and have focus groups to say they'd like or not like a band. Obviously, people are going to like a band. It makes the atmosphere more fun. So do it. Okay, let's move on. Oh, here's some keywords: clean, fair, over-deliver. Next, Federal Express. Now, Federal Express, obviously, in 2013 it's an institution, and nobody thinks about it because it's so ingrained in our business mentality. Well, that was not always the case, okay? And again, remember, I'm going back to 1993 when FedEx was still not necessarily a novelty, but it wasn't as ingrained as it is now. I don't know when FedEx started, maybe in the 70s. In the early days, he won $27,000 in Las Vegas to cover payroll. He knew he wasn't going to make it, so he took what he did have. He went to Vegas, and sure enough, he hit the jackpot. Lets customers sound off. Employees put themselves in the customer's place. We've already kind of talked about that earlier. Customers get a response to an inquiry the same day. And again, we're going to acknowledge that internet and communications have improved and changed, and this may be a little bit outdated, but get the idea. They handle 200,000 calls a day. I'm sure it's different now. 700,000 letters or packages a day. The last that I had was 3.36 million per day in 2009. I'm sure it's well over 4 million by 2013. Phone rarely rings more than once before being picked up. So the idea here is it's a big company that still has small company kind of service, okay? Fred Smith at Federal Express. What makes the difference? Operationssystem allows for quick response both in package delivery and customer relations. And I'm not saying that quick response is necessarily what you need to be known for, but think about it. Is it something that would make a difference? Benefit to customers, high degree of confidence in company's ability to fulfill on the big promise of absolutely positively overnight. Okay. Benefit to FedEx, customers are confident. The price is not as much of an issue. Repeat is automatic. Suggestions for you: find ways that your company can improve response time. One area is operations, maybe procurement or delivery. The other is your systems to handle the customer inquiries and complaints. The key is the system. So what kind of system do you have in place to handle that kind of stuff? Okay. Keywords: response, system, and confidence. The next one is a steel company, Worthington Industries. John McConnell was the specialist there that turned this company around. And an interesting company, again, going back into the 80s here for this discussion. Employees have no job description, no policy manual, no organizational chart. Quality is 5 times higher than industry standard. They don't have a time clock. Everybody's salaried. They treat people like part of something significant. After 90 days, they get a $3,000 bonus and profit sharing. They have to be voted in, though, to get the profit sharing, which means what? If you're some kind of a jackwagon and people hate you, you're not going to get voted in. 30% of the stock is owned by employees. Loyalty without having people to need to be supervised. So he's talking about an employee-owned company. They don't have any janitors. Everybody's responsible for cleaning up their own area. No quality control. Everyone's responsible for their own. No layoffs. They take all employees. The guy on the front end pouring the molten steel goes on sales calls so he can see what's going on in the real world. Hang on. Oh, allergies are getting me. Haircuts available for $2 on company time. I mean, the Google campus might make this look antiquated at this point, but I think you get the idea. What makes the difference? The way they treat employees. Loyalty, dedication, strong work ethic, treating everyone like they own the place, because they do. Their steel is higher quality for the customers, lower defects. They have more input, allows them to control their projects. For the company, the benefit is the customers choose the product for reasons other than price. Reorders automatic, employees stay longer, they try harder. So for you, suggestions: how can you empower your employees to give more pride in their work? Are your frontliners enthusiastic? Are they well versed? Are they well groomed? Are they the epitome of what your company stands for? If not, you need to think about that. Keywords: people, empowerment, ownership, frontliners. Next company, the Limited, women's apparel. What is that? 200 million garments a year through their garments every year, 3 per woman per year. This is actually, again, a 20-year outdated statistic. 26 miles of conveyors, 750,000 boxes a week, leases planes and ships for their exclusive use, 4 to 5 week response. The industry standard is 5 to 9 months. Now, what I'm talking about here is from conception to delivery for sale of fashionable items, okay? Store cash register or link to main headquarters. Again, that is antiquated at this point. That is pretty common. But in those days, that was a big deal. Top 100 store managers won the Vail for Special Recognition Conference. We talked about that earlier, that kind of thing. What makes the difference? Operations allow them to respond quickly to fickle fashions, not later, quicker. Allows them to get ahead of the curve. Commitment to responsiveness, okay? Customers have the most current fashions. Prices are going to be lower, though, because of systemization and volume. They get repeat business. That's good. What would your customers like? Speedier. What is important in the industry? If not, find out what your customers do want. If you ask, they'll tell you. Employees are more loyal, okay? Systemization, reward, response. Now let's talk about a bank. I'm sorry, sir, but you will have to pay $10 fee to talk to a teller, but I was only going to deposit $10. Okay. University of New Hampshire, NH, not New Hampshire, NH Bank, Palo Alto, California. No lines, All employees are trained to be tellers. Now, I'm going to tell you my experience with this, and I'm going to tell you that it makes a huge difference. I bank at Capital One Bank, and the reason I bank at Capital One Bank is because, number one, I had a severe disagreement with Bank of America several years ago, and then I had another severe disagreement with Wells Fargo. So I ended up moving over to Capital One because of the location was convenient. And the bank is good, okay? It's a good bank. I wouldn't call it a great bank. It's not a very busy bank, and there's usually a noticeable lack of people in there. But even still, because it's a small bank, they tend to have a lot of employee turnover, so I don't feel like I really have a relationship with the people at the bank, and as soon as I get one, they seem to leave. And when you go into the bank, it just feels kind of dead, like nothing's happening. Well, I had a situation where I had to go to Chase Bank to deposit a check for an employee for various reasons. Nevertheless, I went into this bank. When I walked into the bank, the first thing I noticed at Chase Bank was it was like a beehive of activity in there. It was so different than the banking experience I was used to, which was basically nothing going on when I opened the door. A beehive of activity, and my first thought was, okay, number one, I'm not exactly sure where to go. Obviously, I'll be able to figure it out quickly. But, man, there's a lot of people in here. Am I going to get stuck waiting? As soon as I had that thought, from behind a receptionist desk, which my bank doesn't have one of because there's nobody to receive almost, a woman comes out and says, what can I help you with? I said, well, I've got this check I need to deposit. She said, well, here, give it to me. She went, she deposited it, and 30 seconds later, she came back and handed me a receipt. I thought, amazing. I didn't even have to wait in line. That's what we're talking about here, okay? No customers by name. Employees have cards that are basically like flashcards to learn the the customers. They give stamps at no extra charge, no chains on pen, calculators are available, office for customers, personal use available. If you want to come in, you can use the office. Try not to charge overdraft fees. Employees get a birthday card with $50, a rose on Valentine's Day. Banker delivers things for you. Banking documents, obviously. Bank will open anytime if you need it. Public restrooms, free balloons for kids, shoe shines, statement day. All the employees get together. You know, this is also outdated because this is not how things are done anymore, but you get the idea. So what makes the difference? Respect of the customer, enthusiasm of employees, flexibility of services. The customers feel less intimidated by the bank, more likely to have wants and needs met given the flexibility of the organization. The bank has customers that complete more transactions, more likely to use the bank for other financial needs. Suggestions: find a way to make doing business with you less threatening, more enjoyable. Show your customers you must trust and respect them as individuals, okay? So let's go through a quick summary of the key points, and then we'll wrap up here. Number one, systematizing operations so that your products or services are the most up-to-date, always consistent, and predictable to your customers, instantly responsive to their needs. Okay, systemization is always a key point. We talk about systemization in marketing. Now we talk about systemization in operations. Okay, responsiveness. Next, maintaining a flexible attitude gives customers confidence to solve their individual problems, not just treated like a number. 3, empowering employees through ownership, rewards, responsibility, greater interest in, so that they have a greater loyalty and interest in completely satisfying the customers. Top-notch work ethics. Okay. Next, showing your customers that you trust them. 5, delivering a product that far exceeds industry standards or customer expectations. That's hard to do, but it can be done. Your prices are going to have to be higher, but that's okay. Next, listening and responding. Next, ensuring that frontliners are treated like the most important person in the company, because they are. Make what others consider to be mundane extraordinary. This is the innovation formula, Pimp My Ride, where we talk about making mundane things extraordinary. Okay? If you're not familiar with that, go back and listen to that webinar. Number 9, providing inspired leadership to your crew and to your customers. That's really what Tom Peters is all about. So that's it for today. That's our Tom Peters webinar. Hopefully you found this to be interesting and enjoyable. I certainly like listening and reading Tom Peters. Go through this stuff, review the webinar once we post it online, and see if you can't pull out some good notes and some suggestions and ideas for your own company and for yourself. That's it. We're going to be back with you at 11:30 Central Time. That's about 40 a little bit less than 45 minutes from now, we're going to go through our Insiders Open Forum. So we'll talk to you at that time, and thanks for participating. Bye now.